political internship coordinator, I help students find jobs in politics. And often they would want to go, they'd want to get a real job that paid. If they applied to Congress for a job, they often had to take 2 trips to Congress at their own expense in order to interview for a job that paid $16,000 a year. And I puzzled about that. And I finally asked Congressman John Linder why that was. And he said, well, it's because you can't trust congressmen with travel money. Interesting. But what it really does is it disadvantages the upstate and all places far afield from Virginia and Maryland. They think, the Beltway thinks, they own all those jobs. And there are a lot of jobs there. Good experience for our young people. When I'm in Congress, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. And when I get through asking questions, I'm going to make a lot of speeches. You know, you can make an hour-long speech after the Congress shuts down. The C-SPAN cameras are still rolling. And there's some people addicted enough to watch these. I'll have charts and pictures of the upstate. Is there a prettier place? And I'll do advertising on the floor of Congress for us, because to see South Carolina is to love it. And I think we can bring more jobs here. We do all the things that Congressman Inglis says.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffrey.
We'll be good.
Solicitor Gowdy.
Thank you, Myra. Before we can get jobs in South Carolina, we have to keep them in the United States of America, because we are competing in a global marketplace, and our trade policies, the discussion of an energy tax, we've got to get companies to locate in the United States before we can get them to come to South Carolina. Cut the corporate tax rate, cut the capital gains tax, decouple health insurance from employment, litigation reform. We, in the 4th Congressional District, have a depth and breadth of talent in advanced materials and in automotive research. I will be an unabashed champion and cheerleader for this congressional district, but we have to have systemic tax reform, corporate tax reform, litigation reform. We've got to stop talking about energy taxes so we can get companies to focus on the United States and then South Carolina and not India and China, which is where they're going now.
While you're standing there, Solicitor Gowdy, over the past week, Senator Lindsey Graham has expressed an interest in working with the Obama administration in shutting down the terrorist detention center in Guantanamo Bay. Do you support, because he believes that it might inflame terrorists to keep them detained there, or it might endanger the lives of our American soldiers to keep the terrorists detained there, or suspected terrorists detained there? If it do you believe in this? Do you agree with this assertion? And if it does in fact close, what should become of these detainees?
With respect to Senator Graham, no, I do not agree with him. I don't want terrorists on American soils. I don't want terrorists tried in civilian courts. When I was a prosecutor at the United States Attorney's Office in 1996, I talked a young man into cooperating with the FBI. He lost his life as a result of that cooperation because I had to turn over all the material to the defense attorney. That's what happens when you start treating terrorists as civilians. We're in a war. We need to act like we're in a war. Leave Guantanamo Bay open. Leave them down there. I haven't noticed any diminution or increase, rather, in public opinion towards America, no matter what we do. They hate us. Leave them in Guantanamo Bay. Try Americans in American court, and do not endanger our homeland by bringing terrorists here. I respectfully disagree with Senator Gray.
Representative Inglis?
I don't think it makes much sense to close Guantanamo. We spent several $100 million there. I've made a suggestion to President Obama twice now in a letter. I think it's sort of a simple letter, but it's sort of helpful. It's basically, Mr. President, why don't you invite some world leaders to go with you on a tour of Guantanamo Bay? Why don't you go down there with media, with the cameras rolling, show them the entire place, show them what several $100 million looks like. And at the end of that tour, I think they will come to the conclusion that some of my colleagues have been there and seen it and come back and told us about. It is a fine facility. Leave them there.
Thank you. Dr. Jeffrey.
Guantanamo was designed to hold terrorists. It's not on American soil. What is the problem? They certainly don't want these trials in New York. They don't want them in Illinois. We don't want them in Charleston. Nobody in America, no law enforcement officials, no governor wants these trials here. Do you know, there's something that bothers me about everything that has to do with the way we deal with terrorism. We should be as tough on terrorists as we possibly can. But instead, we're tough on Americans.
Thank you. Senator Thomas.
We should not subtract from the number of people at Guantanamo who are attacking the United States of America. We should increase the number. It should not be closed, because what that does is sends a message to the terrorists, to Al-Qaeda, that we're beginning to weaken. We're beginning to crumble. They can do whatever they want to do. So there is a faction in the United States, left-leaning faction, that wants us to be weak. That is absolutely the wrong course of action to take. It has in back of it some kind of motive that has a kindness to it, but that's the wrong direction to go.
Okay, Mr. Lee?
With whatever amount of respect, I disagree with Senator Graham. I do not believe Guantanamo should be closed. I believe that we should treat military combatants as military combatants and not as U.S. citizens. I don't believe that those people who are not U.S. citizens deserve access to our criminal justice system. I believe Guantanamo should remain open. I believe that we should prosecute them under military tribunals, as we have in the past successfully, and we need to depoliticize this mess. Part of the reason we're in this mess, however, is Congress's inability to declare war when we're at war.
Dr. Jeffrey, could you tell us what is your opinion of how the Taxed Enough Already, or Tea Party movement has, what kind of an impact it's had on politics in America?
Tea Party movement has had a wonderful impact on politics. 1.8 million people went to Washington with the 9/12 Tea Party movement last September. 9/12 being the day after 9/11. Might have been 3 million. The media initially said 75,000. 75,000, 1.8 million, 3 million, I mean, who knows. But I may tell you, they were from all the way from the Capitol as far as you could see from a helicopter on the mall. It was a huge number. And for every one of those 1.8 million, or maybe 3 million, there were 10 or 20 people who couldn't hop on a bus and come to Washington. That is a huge number, and the support for the Tea Party movement is growing, because the Tea Party principles are American principles. And these are American, middle-class, ordinary people who clean up after themselves.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffries. Representative Inglis?
Yeah, I think that what's happening with the Tea Party is that general interest is beginning to overwhelm the special interest. And that's why I think it's such a welcome force in American politics, is to have people, out of love for country, rising up and saying, no, really, we need to balance the budget, and we're ready for the hard conversation. The hard conversation does involve some hard topics like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Those can be hard discussions, but they need to be had in order to get to the bottom of the problem.
Senator Thomas.
The Tea Party represents a breath of fresh air. It is wonderful to see their energy. It's wonderful to see we the people at work. I went to a Tea Party a meeting, one of the first that was held locally at the Billow Center, and just reveled in what I saw. It was great. And I think as many Tea Parties as you can have without elected representatives speaking, the better, because you get all that input. That is the maximum, door to door. We should not fear Tea Party people. And I just love it that the liberals squirm all over the place about it. They recognize we've gone from a budget only 6 years ago of $5 trillion to in 2 years, $18 trillion. We're out of control.
Mr. Lee?